Thank you for downloading an episode of the Time On podcast. On today's show, we recap a massive 5-day festival of football as both Collingwood and Richmond record their first wins for 2024.
Yes, and then we're going to pay a little closer attention and analyse the most interesting games from the round so far.
And you better believe it, we will unpack and dissect one of the biggest stories in recent memory as the AFL illicit drugs policy is pulled into question once again.
Yes, that's right. The AFL may be famous for rug sweeping, but no, we're going to unpack this and dissect a little deeper.
All that and more on the next episode of the Time On podcast. Nick, it's time for Time On.
Here comes Bunny, wheels around, gathers the football. He's kicked the vertical.
Kakoe launches from 50.
Came out to Wait. Wait said wait. Got it up to May.
Do a push-up with him on top of you, Jakey.
How did he do that?
Wise Pies win the close one. Collingwood are premiers in 2023.
Was doing that. Why didn't he blow time on?
Well, that's the thing. Hurd had kicked the ball, then he's brought the hand up for time on.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Time On podcast. I am your co-host, as always, Mr. Darcy Slam Duncan, and I'm joined by a man who is finally on the board for 2024. It is Mr. Nicholas Creekers. How are you, Nick? Happy Easter once again.
It's good to be walking through these doors after a win. You know that. You know, it's the first time I actually watched a replay multiple times. And, mate, winning on a Thursday night, it literally just sets up your whole weekend so well.
It sets up the perfect weekend. Thursday night footy, winning those games, I wouldn't know it very well, but is the best way to start your weekend. How was your weekend, though, Nick? So you start with a big win on Thursday night, your first of the year. What else unfolded?
A bit of eating. Didn't eat too many chockies though, because you know Greek Orthodox wouldn't have Easter this week, so we're like 5 or 6 weeks behind program. It's not till early May.
So you don't exchange chocolates either. No. So none of those customs, none of the religious aspects. Because I've been eating chocolates for 5 days straight. Look, I feel quite sick at the moment.
Oh no, I'm behind the 8 ball. I actually need to catch up. Maybe I know you've got some lying around here.
I do. I mean, you had a couple last week while you're on the show.
I'm a little bit famished. I need to catch up. Now, apart from that, inhaled a bit of footy, which was great because no family commitment. So that was
no bloody 30th as well.
Oh, for once.
Oh no! I mean, come on, guys.
You're back on next week and the week after.
I'm not going to go. I've had enough. I've had enough of these damn 30th. So I only care about football this time of year. But on the weekend, you didn't just watch football though, Nick. I've heard a couple of rumours, a couple of whispers. You got up to some nefarious antics on Saturday.
I did. Went out to St Kilda, had a pretty good event there. It was called Electric Gardens.
Of course.
Probably self-explanatory there. It was electric. Bumped into some old friends. Chris from Preen.
Oh, Chris from Preen, my old rival.
Yes. Got in and amongst
He's the reason the Supercoach show no longer exists.
We had a ball. I got to say, though, it was at St Kilda Beach just next to where I'm a 30th, actually, at Captain Baxter.
That's right.
A little bit quiet. Like the volume there, they've got noise restrictions, I think, with the probably the local, what do you call them?
Losers.
Council.
Okay.
Yeah, the lefty. I won't get too political on this show.
Not in the first 5 minutes at
The
least.
greenies. Yeah. No. Turn it up, guys. Like, you need that volume pumping and blaring. I don't want to be where I'm at an event, seeing a DJ I love and being able to have a conversation with someone right next to me. Like, I should be screaming at them. I shouldn't be talking to them. I should be just lost in the
Those
music.
conversations are reserved for the smokers area at 4 a.m.
Exactly. And that's what I was getting at. If you're on the dance floor, you're there to dance, right? None of this phones bullshit, just watching you, everything on having a chat. You're doing that in the smokers.
I agree, Nick. I agree. That's why I don't go to these festivals anymore, because I don't like talking to many people. On Good Friday, though, what'd you do on Good Friday? It wasn't your Good Friday, of course.
No. What did I do?
I just watched the footy all day. That's
right.
all I did.
The double header.
It was a double header. Just as an aside, how good is it to have a double header of Good Friday football? Growing up, we had no Good Friday football.
Oh, I think that's the best move the AFL's done. The fact that we introduced Good Friday football as what, 4:20 game?
Yep.
Between North and Blues, a little bit starving, but is what it is. But they've introduced the second game. I think that's brilliant.
Yes, they've had it a couple of times, but I don't think they've had the double header in recent memory. And to have that second game in Perth was excellent. It's just that it was an absolute starving game where Adelaide kicked 4 goals total.
Yeah, that brother's starving.
You remind me, on Friday, I got to visit a little baby magpie, actually, that joined the army. It's my good friend, Anthony Quinto, his little one. Little Louis. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Funniest thing, so actually born on the day we played GWS. So, of course, naturally, he's kitted up in a magpie's onesie. we lost. So they're like, okay, we're going to wear another onesie in the following game against Sydney. Lost. They're like, all right, we've got a third onesie. We're going to dress him in.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah, lost that as well to St Kilda. So, of course, what's any sensible Collingwood supporter going to do? Mate, this little baby ain't getting dressed up. Nothing. So, literally, bare bones, didn't even know.
He's rolling there in his birthday suit, gone butt naked.
Butt naked. And what happens Thursday night? We win.
Maybe you should do that at the game next week.
Well, what we said, hey, we're going to get you a Carlton onesie, and you're going to wear that every week.
No, the Carlton Blues are travelling very, very well. And good to mention that, Nick. Also, on Good Friday, the Good Friday appeal raised $23 million, which is a huge result. One of the great aspects, I feel, of Easter is having the Good Friday appeal. And I think in the past, they didn't want to put a night game on or potentially 2 games on because they want people to focus on the Good Friday appeal. But to have that result out of what's been a great day for the Royal Children's Hospital is a magnificent achievement.
Yeah, definitely. 23 million is insane.
Huge, huge numbers. Congratulations to everybody involved in getting that figure. Nick, that is really what happened on Easter, but there's another big story outside the drugs policy we'll be discussing later on the show. It is the Brisbane Lions and this Vegas saga. I don't know if you've caught much of this. I'm still trying to figure out what has actually gone on because we had a press conference from the general manager of football today of the Brisbane Lions. He said, nothing to worry about. It's not the reason why we're 0-3. The captains, Lockie Neal and Harris Andrews, have said, no, it's nothing to do with the reason why we're struggling this year. But it does feel like something simmering under the surface.
I think you're right. I mean, we've seen the WhatsApp forwarded chats. We've heard about the stories. I guess they actually are confirmed now. Take it from me. I've been to Vegas. Yeah, you can get up to some pretty whack shit there. So you know, you're taking a group of 10 to 12, was it? Footy players, you know, testosterone charge, coming off a loss in the grand final, a very heartbreaking one. Going to let their hair down after what was a pretty grueling season, you know, you're going to get up to a bit of mischief. The thing is, though, like you hear the stories, you hear the rumours, and it sounds like most of this is true. This is, you know, quite disruptive. And what we were saying earlier, it might not be so much amongst the players. Like they might actually be a quietly tight bonded group. But say, for example, you know, you've gone overseas, you know, you've gone up to no good. All of a sudden you've come back home. Now you might not be with that partner. You might have separated from your family or, you know, as an extreme case scenario, yeah, you might be bonded to your teammates fine, but all of a sudden you might have lost something that was, you know, quite structurally important to your life. That's going to play in your, that's going to affect your work performance. And let's face it, their work is their football. So you've come back into a bit of a different environment. You're uncomfortable. I don't know what it is at home. All of a sudden that's been disrupted because of this, you know, this incident and this trip overseas. I think it has a massive effect.
I agree, Nick. I think those sort of things can affect even the best of players and teams and players that have won multiple All-Australians, you know, Brownlow medals, premierships. For a club which hasn't had success since the early 2000s, this sort of thing can be quite detrimental to them going forward. Now, I don't see Brisbane's list as an old list. I mean, they've got some good older players, but they've got some good young emerging players. So I'm not going to write them off for the whole season or the next couple of seasons. But it does feel like outside of the on-field performance that things aren't just quite as harmonious as they've been in the past with this club.
No, that's right. And the thing is, take it back to opening round. At halftime, we're thinking the Brisbane Lions are well in tune here. They're breathing fire. They look like a force not to be reckoned with. And then all of a sudden, it's been back-to-back uncharacteristic losses where they got out to a flying start, then really couldn't wrestle momentum back. And it's like, well, is it the senior leaders? Is a bit of a disconnect? Is no one wanting to be the man to sort of take it up that ante and wrestle it back in their favour? Don't know. Against Collingwood, you could just tell from the first quarter as well. Again, they were well down. Now, they did wrestle momentum back, but I don't know. They just, I feel like they're just collectively maybe 10 to 15% off, and no one's sort of taking the onus and going, you know what, this stops with me. And I'm going to take charge here.
I mean, we can unpack that game a little bit later on the show, but I think their leaders like Andrews and Neal were okay in that game, but didn't have a lot of help in that contest.
Yeah.
They are struggling very much, Brisbane. We'll see if they can turn it around the next couple of weeks. One other thing I wanted to mention, now, I don't know if you caught this, but on Saturday afternoon, 3AW reported that Sam Wicks was out of the Sydney Swans squad. It's a hard one to say. So he wasn't going to play this week. He's regularly a fixture of this team.
Is it role player?
And it was reported that there was an internal investigation that he had a relationship with a teammate's ex-partner. Now, they had a thorough internal investigation, and it turns out nothing happened along those lines, that there's nothing to worry about. But why?
Isn't that it didn't exist, or they did confirm it did happen, but they were just sort of no issue?
Well, the report, according to 3AW, was that there was nothing to answer to. So whether it happened or it didn't happen or did anything wrong or right, that is still unconfirmed. but he didn't play on Sunday against Richmond, and Sydney obviously lost that game. It just raises questions as to what actually happened, and if he didn't do anything wrong, why was he not playing?
Oh, that's a very good
question. The mental toll was too much, apparently.
That, to me, suggests, well, there's probably some sort of level of discomfort amongst the playing group to have this guy, now they've understood, hang on, there's a player who's now dating someone, an ex-partner of another player.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, of course. So, I don't know. To me, though, it's a bit of an unspoken rule. You don't do that. It's that bro code.
I agree.
You just don't even entertain that idea. So the fact that he was then removed from the squad, look, I think they probably managed that well because there might have been some sort of tensions. I thought, you know what, we're not going to take you over interstate to the Melbourne game, or to play in Melbourne, sorry. It's better off we just deal with it. You know, and kudos to Sydney. They're probably one of the best well-run operations anyway in the business. So, I don't know, it's just strange. I've actually never heard of someone getting managed or dropped because of dating, another teammate's ex.
No, I've never heard it before in my life. I also never heard of people able to do drugs and then getting away with it. But we live in a new age of the AFL.
Yeah, well, look, people do stupid things. I mean, look at North Melbourne, Wayne Carey back in 20-odd years ago. So,
Boris the chicken.
It doesn't have, nothing should really surprise us. But, it was a bit of an eyebrow raiser.
Was an odd one over the weekend. Just quickly to finish up, Nick, Good Friday footy we touched on. I've got a bit of feedback, which we need to talk about on the show. Apparently we haven't mentioned Carlton once this entire season, and their fans are getting upset.
Did we mention them in opening round?
I thought we did, but apparently their win over North Melbourne deserves some sort of talk on this show, or their win over Richmond.
And we both had them in our top four.
Correct.
We both said that, or I definitely said it's going to hinge on Harry Mackay's output. If he can get back to his best.
He's probably the best forward in the league right now.
Did a nail on the head? Yeah. You could argue that, yeah.
I don't have a trumpet sound effect, but I'm happy to blow your own trumpet right now, Nick.
So, all right, go on.
So, Blues, they're travelling pretty well, but I didn't think their performance against North Melbourne deserves a 5-minute segment.
I was thinking about it. I know the Blues are humming, right? And look, it is March. It's April, actually. It is April. But who have they beaten? They've beaten Brisbane away. Granted, that's an amazing win. They've beaten Richmond, who's a rebuilding club. They're just. And then they've beaten North Melbourne, a rebuilding club. So, like, all right, you're 3-0. You're probably expected to go 2-1, but you're actually 3-0. So you're probably one win ahead of, the ledger of what you expected. So, yes, you're playing sensational footy, but let's just calm down a bit. It's April.
Blues fans, it's going to be okay. You've got a big match this round in Gather Round against the Freo Dockers. At the Adelaide Oval, we'll definitely be talking about that game next week. And if you lose, don't worry, we'll definitely be talking about that. Just finally, it was Easter Monday footy today, and you thought it was Easter round, but Nick, it was also a lightning round. First time I can ever remember that a game was delayed due to inclement weather. Ever seen this before in your life?
Nah, first time. You know what's funny? The second time the game's been delayed in the last, 2 years? Geelong. Buddy's 1,000th goal.
Of course.
It was in the
and
last
also the lights went out in Brisbane Melbourne.
Actually,
it's the third time.
There you go. Sorry, it's been 3 times in the last 3 years.
We never said it before in our entire lives.
No, thank God.
Now, this happens sometimes in America. I think in like Miami or sometimes even Jacksonville, where you have like a lightning or thunder. It can be delayed for like 3 or 4 hours sometimes.
Wait, so you tell me the game still goes on?
The game has to have an ending, but there's no time limit. I think with today, the rules were if it was over like an hour, the winner at half-time wins the game.
At half-time?
Yes. So say Hawthorn were up by a point at half-time, but Geelong were up by 40 points at three-quarter time, Hawthorn would win the game. So that's if the game was delayed by, I think, over an hour.
I'm going to go extreme case. Imagine it's a grand final.
Please.
Imagine it's a grand final.
They would find a way.
And they go, hang on, by the letter of the law. And we're not going to go, well, you can't go to extra time. It's not the case. That makes no sense. So the winner of halftime, or the leader of halftime, wins.
Yes, if there's a long delay where they can't finish the match. Because I think there was a 41-minute delay in this game. Yes. So we're watching and we think, we're going to do the pod early about 6 o'clock. I'm like, it's 6:30, the game is still going. It's very, very rare events. Just quickly on the game, though, any sort of learnings you've got out of that one?
Well, ebbed and flowed. I think the Cats just looked like a really mature, strong outfit. But then Hawks wrestled it back. Jack Ginnivan not getting paid high free kicks.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, people say there is a Ginnivan tax and that we haven't paid enough attention to the rough treatment he's been given. I counted about 4 or 5 free kicks, sometimes head highs, sometimes below the legs, where he just wasn't given. But what's going on here? Because he doesn't play for Collingwood anymore. Everyone hates him, surely.
That's the thing that actually, it's boggling my mind, because he's not wearing Collingwood colours and he's still getting the exact same treatment. But he's probably getting hit just as bad, or if not worse. It's actually crazy. And even the commentators now, No, I think he got hit high. Like, you got to pay that.
I know it's naturally his game to shrug the shoulders, to sometimes bury his head.
If he get
but
hit high.
he's getting tackled high every single time. And he's a gun set shot as well. So that's part of his tactics to put himself into the game. Umpires, you got to pay it eventually, even if you don't like the bloke, which most of us don't do, really.
I still do.
It's about time we unpack a big round 3 of football. Nick, I think we should start at the Adelaide Oval on Saturday night as the Melbourne Demons defeated Port Adelaide 96-89. Now, I don't know if you caught most of this. I watched it at our good friend Marcus's house.
No, caught the back end of the last
Oh,
quarter.
you did? It was a very, very good last quarter. Start of the game, though, Port Adelaide shot out the blocks, kicking the first 3 goals of the contest, and they really beat Melbourne in pretty much every key statistic in this game, apart from accurate goal kicking. They didn't put it on the scoreboard. What did you take out of this contest? I was impressed by Port early, but Melbourne really did struggle. Sorry, Melbourne really did put their grasp on this game and able to out-muscle them throughout the contest.
Yeah, impressed that they could just grind that out, and they looked fitter, especially towards the end of the game. What I like about Melbourne now is the balance with their tools. You know, Ben Brown is back to his full fitness. He kicked, 3 goals?
Kicked 3 straight.
And in big moments as well. I like that they've sort of reinvented Tom McDonald as a backman now. So he's
reinvented. He's gone back to the future.
Yeah, he literally is. Was gun backman, gun forward, and then gun back again. So, or maybe not gun, I've just jumped the gun there.
Oh, premiership forward.
So I like the balance they've got there. And Max Gawn just doing Max Gawn things. Like, he just ripped the game to shreds.
Something like 50 hit outs.
Oh.
So many contested marks.
How about some of the hit outs? Like, he's just swatting Ivan Soldo, a premiership ruckman.
Yeah, Ivan. Don't call him Ivan.
No, definitely not. He's just like literally spiking the ball 25 metres out of the centre square. Insane, the amount of purchase he gets.
It's pretty easy to beat any sort of press or zone when you're just punching the ball 50 metres each time.
And their leaders, like I think Christian Petrarca as well, just putting together another fine year. I mean, the guy's elite. He's done it for 5th year running now, so you know you're going to get out of him.
And it wasn't just the big names, obviously. Petrarca, Oliver, Gawn, they had good performances, but Cosy Pickett came back in the team. He's looked pretty lively, kicked 2 goals in this one. But my man, the nibbler, Alex Neil, ball in 24 possessions, 12 contested, and 2 goals.
Best on.
One of the most underrated players in the competition right now. I'd have him all-Australian half-forward line. He's such a good, creative, solid, and also very reliable player. I couldn't tell you how many times he's had a poor performance with the Demons.
He's always been a really good finisher as well. He's just got really good skills, and I don't believe he's that one of those fringe players. He's just a genuine star role player for the Melbourne Demons.
He's been an absolute gun for the Demons in recent memory. On the Port flip side, I was a bit discouraged in this game because of how well they started, but mainly it's because I don't feel their defense has really clicked yet. I saw a Savaradagalia, Alia. I saw a lot of their defenders out of position or just struggling to impact the contest. Sometimes they'd leave their opponent, try and go 3rd, 4th man up, ball spills out the back. I don't feel like they've got enough connection with their defense just yet. They don't quite know what each other's going to do.
Yeah, you're right, but it will take a bit of time to gel as well. Like, you've got Asava playing the new fullback role. You've got Brendan Zerk-Thatcher as well coming down there. So it's probably going to take maybe half a season, if not the full season, just to get that really clicking. And, I mean, let's face it, who did Port Adelaide play first round? They played West Coast.
Yes.
Then they played last week Richmond. So, really, this is the first test they've had all season, and they failed it at home.
Yes, it's interesting what they'll do next Friday night on Gather Round against the Essendon Football Club. I'm not ready to throw Port out just yet, but I've been very impressed by the Demons the past couple of weeks. They look like a contender once again.
Let's take it away to Thursday night, where it was Collingwood defeating Brisbane by 20 points at the Gabba. First win for the Pies in 5 years, not since 2019. But what you could tell from the first quarter, the intensity was there and the attitude that they were on. So, I mean, personally, I actually tipped Brisbane to win and run away for it. We all did. It was the sensible thing to do. But at quarter time, I think the Pies are on here. This is they got something to prove. And, it was, for me, the most telling thing was there were less tackles being broken. It was gang tackles. It was stop, reset, grunts, getting the territory. And this time as well, we'll be able to finish as well. So and this time as well, we were able to finish in front of the Big Six. I think Jamie Elliott probably had his best game all season.
Yes.
He's actually been pretty good this season as well. The midfielders, leaders like Scott Pendlebury, Tom Mitchell, I think Jack Crisp as well, coming on as the sub, played a starring role. I don't know, I felt like they had something to prove. and Nick Dacos as well.
Yes,
Nick, child prodigy.
Nick Dacos is very good. Thrown back to the halfback flank that he knows so well. I thought Darcy Moore was pretty strong in this game. Very rarely got beaten. And your midfield, I think they competed really well. So you took Nick Dacos out of your midfield, put him in the halfback line. But Tom Mitchell comes in and has a very big impact about this game. He's had a good matchup against Brisbane in the past. He's someone you can really rely on in this sort of contest. And one of my men, obviously Bobby Hill played well in this game. Kicked 3 in the first half. I think he's just a great player. But John Noble... he is a very, very good player. So unlucky not to be part of the premiership team in 2023. I think he had like 25, 26 disposals, just an assured player in the half-back line. I think you've been missing that.
No, I'm so glad you said that. I mean, let's not forget, he played 20 games a row consecutive last year. He missed out in finals. The thing that I love about Fly is last week we identified we're not getting enough drive out of our half-back line. You know, Oleg Markov struggled. I think we had Jack Crispy, couldn't really get into the game. So, you know, as supporters, we're thinking, well, get Nobis back. We know he's going to give us that dare. He's probably going to turn over a bit, but that's all right. He's just going to give us something a bit creative and get a little maestro, Nick Dacos, back on the half-back flank. Get him outside of the gut just to see if we can change that structure and moving the ball up forwards. And those are the exact 2 moves he did make. And we saw how much that benefited us.
It was good to see him fling the magnets around, but sometimes you don't see a coach do that. They'll back in the veteran. So you'll back in side bottom, you back in Crisp. He said, no, don't care. This isn't working in 2024. Side bottom, you're out of the side. Crisp, you're the sub. You can have impact when you come on, but I have to reward the people that are playing well in the VFL and the people that are in the position right now to win us this game. Those are the tough calls that a lot of coaches wouldn't make. That's why McRae is regarded as one of the best in the competition.
Really respect that. The Brisbane Lions, I mean, 2 players I want to bring up. Cam Rayner, we talked about in the
Talk about him every week.
I mean, he's not quite fit enough to be an out-and-out star midfielder, but he's just not quite impactful enough, doesn't get enough possessions to really impact games.
I don't think he's got probably the polish or the tank to play as a midfielder. He's a brute player.
I feel like a lot of Brisbane supporters especially will be like, this guy could be so much more. And we know he can as well, but we're just not seeing it.
What was the comparison to him as a young man? It was Dusty. Like he could be your Dusty, and is nowhere near that.
No, he's so far off it. And look, the second player, I mean, he's well down in confidence. Eric Hipwood. I mean, he's their second tall.
Wow.
How many times have we heard you're not going to win a flag with Joe Danaher and Hipwood? I mean, look, I know they got devastating close last year. Probably should have lost by 4 goals in that granny, let's be serious. But Eric Hipwood is just way down on confidence. And if you're only getting at 6 or 7 touches a game and maybe 1 or 2 looks at goal, you'd bloody hope you kick one of them.
Well, just watching the game on Thursday night, it was the drop marks from Hipwood and Danaher. They had no presence aerially for those 2 big blokes. And I thought that would be a way to challenge Collingwood. We saw Max King kick 3 goals last week. Who'd you play opening round? You had Jesse Hogan, Cullen Brown. They were taking marks at will. They were kicking goals. I don't feel like Brisbane's forward line was any real threat to Collingwood in this game. And this was the Collingwood defense which had struggled in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Mind you, Charlie Cameron, who always gives us a bath, was barely sighted. I think that was probably his worst game against us.
Cameron had a slow start to the year. So have Brisbane. What do you want to do with Eric Hipwood in general? Because Matthew Lloyd said today he should be dropped.
I mean, on that deal, so let's just rewind it. December 2022, Darcy, right? He's under contract until the end of 2023. Now, what Brisbane did, they actually signed a 6-year extension. So that's a 7-year contract, taking him to end of 2029.
Let's see what Kane Corns had to say about that.
At 32 years old. I think Kane was well against it. I think the footy world was actually shocked. So at the time, they did lose Dan McStay, going to the Pies in that off-season. But, I mean, does that force you to go, nah, I'm going to play my hand, 6-year extension for Eric Hipwood? I mean, we're talking about a guy, 200 centimetres, drafted right in 2015, 83 kegs. Now, he weighs 94 kegs, going about 11. I feel like at 25, 26 years old, he's probably he's probably maximised all his physical attributes. Like, this is prime Eric Hipwood. I don't know, confidence is down. I don't know if his spot's safe.
Is he ever going to be a 50 to 60 goal forward?
I don't think he will be. He's just going to be that third tall. And he's playing as a second tall.
Well, that's not worth a 7-year deal. Probably at, upwards of $600,000 a year.
No way.
Struggle to see how Brisbane turn it around the next couple of weeks. We look at their fixture, Nick. They play Melbourne, Geelong, and GWS after playing North Melbourne and gather around. You're looking at a 1-5, 1-6 start. Now, historically, if you start 0-3, you can't make the top 4. But if you start 0-3, 0-4, your chances of playing the finals are very, very small. Where do you have Brisbane the rest of this year? This is the team that you had top of the ladder, I had second.
It's literally make or break this next month. So you've got North in a neutral ground, and you've got Sydney away.
You got Melbourne away, Geelong in GMHBA, and GWS I think is in Canberra.
Yeah, that's right. So these are tough. look, 3 of those 4 games are going to be tough. I mean, they need to come away 3-1 out of that.
They're not traditionally a strong travelling team either.
That's the thing. That's their Achilles heel. The travel,
especially the MCG.
Oh, look, it's make or break the next month, definitely.
Do you think they're going to play finals still?
I think they're confident just with the home ground advantage. I mean, they've lost to Carlton, who we suspect are, a top 4 candidate, and then they've lost to Collingwood, the reigning premiers at the Gabba. So, they've lost 2 games at the Gabba, yes, but against 2 very good opposition. So I'm not ready to rule them out just yet.
For the first time in my life, I'm thinking a game at the Gabba might mean something to Essendon. We play them round 24. Hopefully that is for finals for one of our teams. Interesting to see what happens in Brisbane the rest of the year. Nick, we'll move on to Saturday, 4:20 at Marvel Stadium. It was the biggest game of the 2024 season, at least in my opinion. Essendon 71 defeated St Kilda 67. I don't know if you caught all of this game. Actually, I think you didn't catch all of this game. You were at yet another tech event, but I was there at Marvel Stadium and Essendon down St Kilda. This was a very entertaining game despite all the terrible, terrible goal kicking and a thrilling finish led by the enigmatic Jake Stringer as he pots one from 55 metres on the boundary.
Essendon wind up again. Corbell's had a big last quarter, and that is precision. This is the Easter Saturday drop punt, and it's just as good, if not better.
Nick, I'm excited about this Bombers team because finally they're not that terrible at centre bounces. They're the number 1 ranked centre bounce team. Their forward line is operating with a little bit more efficiency, and it seems they have that. Well, it seems they've got that damn Essendon edge, whatever the hell that is.
The edge. It's here.
I thought the edge was in you too, but here we go.
I love that you actually alerted me. It's Brad Scott who invented that term. It wasn't the media.
No.
Just driving it up.
Yeah,
so
it was at a press conference maybe in the preseason or before opening round. They asked Brad Scott, what are you looking to bring this season? He's like, I want to bring the Essendon edge back. Like, what's the Essendon edge? It's clearly knocking people out unfairly.
Hey, if you're beating Port Adelaide next week, you might call you the Rated R Superstar.
You think you know me.
So I didn't catch much of it. What I was keeping tabs on was Nick Martin, who was just chopping up, and I recently just traded him out of my Supercoach team, begrudgingly. But no, I saw the last 5 minutes when Jake Stringer did have that shot from outside 50. The thing that's probably the most impressive, I think, years gone by, Essendon probably loses that game. The fact that you didn't lead all game, it was one of those, backs against the wall, you're trying to edge closer, you actually found a way to win. I can't remember too many games in the last probably 3-4 years where you're in that type of scenario and you did pull a win out of your ass.
I think we've won
very lightly, very not out of your ass, but it was you just manufactured a win when the chips were down.
No, you'd say out of your ass. Say how you actually think, Nick. No, but in reality though, St Kilda could have put us away early. They missed a lot of chances in the second and third quarters, and we stuck around that whole game. So we kept it about 10, 11 points, and when our run came, we put it on the scoreboard. I think we had the chance to make it maybe 12 points or even 14 points late in the game, but we kept peppering the goal. And the Saints, actually, they undid themselves in the end because they had options.
Mateus
Philippou, I mean, he had a chance to center it to Zach Jones. I think there was another player which was open as well.
Higgins as well.
He had a couple of options and would have been a relatively simple shot with a minute left. And then we'd be having a very different conversation about Essendon and St Kilda right now. But it was Essendon's backline, particularly in the second half, they're able to force turnovers or take intercept marks. I love Ben Mackay's game. He had 4 contested marks, I think 13 intercept possessions. And for the first time in my life, or at least the last decade, I didn't feel it was a goal every single time the ball went inside 50 for the opposition. Our defence was a bit more composed, and I think that's tactically we try to surge a bit more. I think we're trying to have more numbers up the ground in order to force turnovers into our forward 50, and we did that a bit more effectively in this game, turning the ball over and taking intercept marks, giving it like to Heppel, Martin, McGrath, so we had more run to give the ball inside 50.
Well, how handy has Ben Mackay been? I mean, he's playing that key post, full-back role. Yeah, it allows you to play a different brand. Remind me, how far away is Ridley?
Ridley is a chance to play this week. So it was a grade 1 quad strain, which he did in the pre-season game, and we're now a month away from that.
I'm really curious to see how, when he slots into the back line, what does that change for you guys? Are you going to be an even more attacking team off the half-back line?
Potentially. I mean, he's one of the best interceptors in the league, so having him next to Mackay makes us even more dangerous. I don't know who comes out of the team just yet.
Laverty? Is he
Laverty maybe, but Laverty's kind of playing more of a lockdown role with Reid out of the team. So with Reid doing his hamstring, they brought Laverty straight in. So, I mean, people will obviously say, even Joe from Essendon would say, Dyson Apple, he's got to go. He had 33 disposals in this game. He's actually quite good.
Yeah, he was close to one of your best, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was very good in this game. He started slowly, and people were trying to sack Dyson Heppel after 5 minutes, but he worked well into the game, and sometimes it's good to have those cool heads under pressure. Just Essendon in general, Nick. Anything you took from this game thinking going forward, this could be a problem for other teams?
if Jake Stringer becomes that match winner that Essendon fans have cried for, because they've seen glimpses, then yeah, he's going to be a bit of a worry. You know, can he maintain his fitness throughout the whole season, and can he just stand up in the big moments? Because, you know, let's not take away too much, but that's actually Jake Stringer's job. You know, he's the $800,000 a year sort of player commanding that sort of money. His job in those games is to actually win it for Essendon. So he did it that week.
Yes, he can do things that no one else can do. Yep. And I think in the first quarter, he might have had one possession. He's similar to Jordan De Goey. He's just an earlier version of Jordan De Goey before he's had 25 touches, and that he needs a couple of chances to rip the game on its head. And there's not many people that can do it like Jake Stringer. Contract year Stringer, Nick, he's a very different beast, one of the best players in the league.
Next one, we got Richmond defeating Sydney by 5 points to the MCG. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I don't think anyone tipped Richmond unless you're a Richmond nuffy. I mean, what do we make of this? It was literally backs against the wall. Dustin Martin not playing as well.
Yes.
I think the Richmond faithful, for their first win of the year, were treated as something special.
Now, you'd think, there's no way anyone would tip Richmond. There's no way anyone would give Richmond a chance, but I just had that feeling in my gut sometimes that when Richmond are playing the MCG, they're always a slight chance, particularly against an interstate opponent. And we'd seen Sydney had not been that great through the midfield. They'd been very well at transitioning the ball. Now, Richmond, they beat them at their own game. This time they put pressure in the forward half, and they took their time, had measured kicks, and they were able to transition the ball from the defence to the forward line. And I was super impressed by their youngsters, the likes of Tom Brown, not the former Tom Brown Channel 7 reporter, the youngster playing for Richmond. And other young players are Sonsi, Thompson Dow, good to mention. He's been a very good midfielder for them this year.
Seth Campbell?
Seth Campbell, I think that's his name. There's a lot of these Richmond youngsters. I'm not sure. A lot of faceless men so far. They've only played about 20 or so games, but I've been impressed by what they did because they're missing so many players, and they lost a couple in this game. Should mention Tom Lynch, hamstring tendon injury, potentially going to miss 3 months. Noah Bolter, MCL, going to miss probably a month as well. So the fact that they've overcome all those injuries in game as well and still pull this out, credit to them.
Yeah, also what did catch my eye, some of the non-calls on the Richmond tackles to Sydney Swans players in the last quarter, where it was a blatant, obvious hole in the ball, whistle went away. And I thought we had it bad a couple of weeks ago. I think Richmond Footy Club definitely have the worst.
Do you know the stats? Richmond are last in the free kick ladder of the last decade.
Yes.
People say, the Arms rob us every single week. Richmond fans have an actual cause for concern because the Arms do not give them anything on a weekly basis.
No, I can see exactly. I totally agree with that. I can barely speak and get it out.
Now, Swans, I'm not too concerned about this performance because I know they've got so many coming back. I think Dane Rampy had hamstring awareness, so he missed the last quarter of this game. But it's hard to really judge them until we get Mills, Parker and Adams back on the field. I think Adams has a chance to return and gather around the other two a little bit further away. Do you have any concerns from this performance from Sydney?
Look, travelling away to the MCG, they're probably not famous for winning too many of those games. I know they touched up Collingwood a couple of weeks ago. Look, it's not panic stations, but the thing is, Sydney started so hot out of the block. And now it's going to be interesting how quickly people or the other clubs are now going to identify their strong points and are they going to work them out over the next couple of months. So, yeah, look, it's a wait-and-see thing. Definitely not panic stations. I mean, to be honest, they only lost by 5 points. Probably should have put this to bed earlier.
Yep, had a chance to steal at the end as well. We're still pretty strong on the Swans for the rest of the season, and it was a great win from Richmond to kickstart 2024. Well, that's it for our wrap-up of round 3, Nick. It is time to get a little bit serious here on the Time On podcast. It's time to talk about the AFL's Illicit Drugs Policy.
So I think with last week's breaking news, and it was quite shocking, let's face it, the AFL Illicit Drugs Policy, does it need a shake-up? Do we need to revisit this? Does it need more of an in-depth analysis? Because I feel like this is just something that's just swept under the rug. No one really dares to sort of take a second glance. It's just accepted. And I feel like really the AFL don't want to do anything differently either.
I think they're quite content in how it's all running. I mean, Andrew Dillon came out during the week and just said, yeah, it is of our utmost importance to make sure players don't test positive on match day. So we pull them out by faking injuries. I was unaware that was common practice. I think the players, well, at least the coaches were unaware that was practice as well because they acted like they'd never heard of this before in their lives. Nick, I'm here questioning, do we trust the AFL anymore? I feel like there's a loss of faith in terms of how they run the AFL because players can now take drugs willy-nilly and nothing really happens.
Yeah, you can't wholeheartedly agree and go, no, I trust everything that the AFL is giving us at the moment. So what it sounds like is that there's an element of damage control and just control in general, especially when these incidents come to light. So I feel like the general process would be player A takes an illicit substance, club B then finds out what's happened, and then I feel like the AFL then intervene and go, hang on, we're just going to put this we're just going to put this spot fire out and just do our thing, wash our hands with it, and all is well. I mean, let's talk about the illicit drugs policy. So there's something like a 3-strike policy. Tell me, Darcy, in the last 15 years, which player has received 3 strikes?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to go with 0, or at least in terms of public knowledge, no one we know has had 3 strikes.
Who's got 2 strikes? No one knows.
Well, no one knows. I think the original policy is that if you test positive once, you undergo some sort of counselling, you have a $25,000 fine, and you don't miss any games. But if you have a second strike, you're meant to miss 4 weeks, and your name's meant to be public knowledge.
Yeah.
So
you're
here telling me that no one has ever tested positive twice to illicit substances?
Impossible.
It wouldn't have happened.
You're taking spectators and punters like us for nothing here. So we're not that dumb. Something's going on, and can we change it? Like, are there ways to improve it? Because let's face it, like over the last 10, 15 years, so going back to even 2006, 2007, when we obviously know what was happening in West Coast and the ice saga and everything rife through there, has anything improved? It's much like music festivals. You're never going to quite eradicate drug use. At a music festival, all you can do is sort of, go into damage control. Can we look at different measures? Can we almost test drugs so that there's no fatalities or any serious injuries? Same with the AFL. I mean, you're not going to eradicate the drug culture. It's so embedded.
But I ask you, why is it so accepted as well? So you're being asked to do this as a professional. You're getting paid very well to be an AFL footballer, to be a professional athlete. If you're told you cannot take illicit drugs, you can't take cocaine, you can't take marijuana, whatever your drug of choice may be, you can't do it. Why do players continue to do it? Why do you risk your professional career? Why is it we're allowing AFL footballers to do it? And not even that, to have multiple strikes and still get away with it.
It's unacceptable. You can't be doing that. If that's a trade-off, you're going to get paid very handsomely. You're an elite athlete. You don't want to be putting illicit substances that, God knows where it's originated from into your body, because you are an elite athlete.
Yes.
And you're going to get away with it. It's unacceptable. The thing is, though, that's a bit shocking. It's not just the AFL industry. It's a lot of professional work environments. And a lot of that corporate environment, there is heavy illicit substance use.
Yes.
But, of course, no one's going to acknowledge that and test it per se, like ASADA and WADA and all those bodies regulate it. But the thing is, I think we need to go a little bit tighter, or do we need to change something?
I think we do, because we've looked at the history of illicit drugs in Australian rules football, and it's not something that's come up overnight, Nick. You alerted me to, was it Daniel Connors back in 2012? Now, did he strikes against the illicit drugs policy, or was this considered a problem child?
No, he did. So at the time, in 2012, he missed, I think, a series of training sessions along with Dustin Martin. I believe he had some prescription sleeping tablets.
Yes.
Obviously also had an alcohol problem as well. I think the year prior he received an in-house suspension due to alcohol-related charges. I feel like there's a notion where the elite players, the really good ones, the ones that are taking illicit drugs, they get protected. And it's those other ones, those peripherals, they just cut out. It's like you're trying to weed out those bad students. If they're straight A students, but they're a little bit, they've got a few hairs on them, it's okay. If they're absolute troublemakers and they're cancers, they just cut them.
Well, I think that was the deal with Connors, in that he was a troublemaker for Dusty, who they considered a potential face of the club going forward. So it made sense to get rid of Connors, at least push him out the door and try and get Dusty on the straight and arrow. But it wasn't just 2012 when the first time that I remember this happening. Do you remember back in 2004? Because this is on the run sheet, Nick, this is my own personal research. Remember Lawrence Angwin and Carl Norman at Carlton? They showed up to training under the effects of ecstasy.
Yes. Did they both get sacked?
Well, Lawrence Angwin was sacked. I think, is it Carl? Yes, Carl Norman missed one game. He only got a one-game ban, but Lawrence Angwin had a rap sheet of previously indiscretions in regards to, I think, drugs, alcohol, or just attending training late in multiple instances. So there, he was sacked. He was shown the door. Lawrence Angwin, Carl Norman got a 1-match suspension. Wow. But I think in a response to that was then the illicit drugs policy was formed in 2005, as this happened in 2004.
Wow. The thing is, though, as a young teenager at that point in time in your life, you obviously want to go out, you've finished school, you're now drafted to a club, you're effectively now an ambassador for a club. So your mates are all going out, they're getting on the piss, they're getting up to God knows what, you're staying out late. Of course, as a friend, you want to be out there and experience those things. You can't obviously meddle with that, but unfortunately, younger players do, get carried away and they get incentivized thinking, hang on, I want to have a good time. I'll sort of put my career in jeopardy, and I'm in the public spotlight and anything goes. I mean, back then, they were lucky that they didn't have any smartphones. Right?
Yeah.
So they obviously just were literally off the dial.
That's been the undoing of a lot of players, the fact the smartphone era.
Of course. So, let's put it this way. You're an 18 to 21-year-old kid getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. The average wage in Australia, I think, $69,000 AUD, right? So you're getting paid about 7 to 8 times that on an average wage, maybe even half that. You're on $200K. That's a pretty damn good salary, right? At 21 years old, it is so easy for you to get carried away and go, hang on. But then ultimately, it's up to you, the individual, and the environment that you brought up with, your club organisation, to sort of foster the relationships, foster the leadership to then guide these young guys away from that shit.
I understand that, Nick. I think a lot of these players, let's just call a spade a spade. They're not necessarily Rhodes Scholars.
No.
I mean, they're not necessarily the most intelligent people in society, but they've found an avenue in life to get paid quite well and do what they love, which is Australian rules football. But ultimately, it's your decisions. Like, if you want to go out there and take drugs, you got to realize you got to deal with the ramifications and repercussions of doing such things. Now, we talked about this earlier today. The drugs policy. How can we reform it? How can we make it better? Because right now, it does not work. Started in 2005. We've had a couple of reforms since. But Luke Beveridge said when Bailey Smith got done for drugs, and he said it a couple of days ago, there shouldn't be a drugs policy. What do you think we should do?
I think it's a great question. Because talking to Joe, a good friend of ours at the event, I reckon I kind of agree with what he had to say. So what Joe said was that we should actually scrap the drugs policy altogether. And then what you do is you leave it to be a police matter. So obviously if someone's taking drugs, if it's a criminal offence where, by the letter of the law, they're in breach of it, let the police deal with it. You can suspend them internally and just until the investigation's pending or closed, whatever. But then also you leave it up to, if you're caught on game day with drugs in your system, you're gone. You're gone per the ASADA/WADA, testing requirements. So if you're caught with a banned substance on day, too bad, so sad. Like, that's it. So I don't mind that approach, because you shouldn't have to make probably the AFL sort of intervene and step into it. I feel like ultimately, if the players doing that, it's illegal anyway. Just let the police deal with it. It's a police matter.
I tend to agree with you, Nick. I mean, in competition testing, there shouldn't be cocaine in your system, like 1 or 2 days before the game, because it is considered by WADA as a performance-enhancing agent. So there shouldn't be in your system regardless. But do you think that players should then be able to take illicit drugs during the week, say from Tuesday to Thursday? Now, that seems a crazy thing to do. You're going out to a nightclub on Tuesday night having cocaine, but this has obviously happened before in the past.
Well, that's the thing. You're going to run the risk of, you're probably going to get tested. And if it shows up, you're gone for 2-4 years, whatever it is. Of course, you're not going to encourage that. The thing is, though, does that de-incentivize a player using it? Probably not. The other thing you could look at was maybe looking at your contract clauses. So when you sign up for an organisation, is there a way that clubs could potentially penalise you? Match payments. Say I'm a top earner at the footy club getting $1 million a year. Maybe I have a drug indiscretion or something. Do these asterisks then come into play? Maybe I get fined, or maybe some of my, maybe the security's not there so much. What's going to incentivize a player to do the right thing more often? It's a hard one, but maybe hitting their contract is a start.
That's a good idea, Nick. I think there has to be a way to penalise the player, because we just can't have it in the game. And you mentioned to me earlier today, there's a couple of unlucky incidents in the past where players have tested positive to the illicit drugs. And, talk about Colin, your club, Josh Thomas and Lockie Keefe. What happened to them a couple of years ago?
It took everyone by surprise. It's about 9 years ago now.
It feels like yesterday.
I know. So in 2015, Lockie Keefe and Josh Thomas, I think they were travelling overseas to New Zealand. Look, they got to a bit of mischief. They had clenbuterol into their system, which at the time was a banned substance. So I believe they returned a positive test to the A sample on Feb 10, and then the analysis the B sample on April 14. So this was like the off-season of 2015.
And you'd think that the testing wouldn't be as frequent in the off-season either.
That's
right.
So
it's very unlucky for them to be done in this instance.
So the understanding was, they allegedly took illicit substances, which then contained traces of this banned substance, clenbuterol. So it's to be used therapeutically to treat asthma, and it's not approved in Australia for human use. So look, the thing is, you don't know what's in these substances. You're not going to test them. There's no receipts. You got no idea what's in it. So you run the risk there. Alert me to another one. I think
remember this? Ahmed Saad. He was Ahmed Saad The Garage Man?
The Garage Man,
The Garage
yes.
Man himself. So he was suspended from football for 18 months back in 2013. Saad tested positive for the banned substance, you might help me here, methylcinephrine, HCl, contained in an energy drink he consumed before a game earlier that year. Now, the SADA regulations permit the substance to be taken during training, but not on match days. This is what makes it so hard for athletes, is that you can take something during the week, but if you take it on game day, it's a performance-enhancing agent, which can help you win the game and get you suspended.
I forgot about that. So it's allowed in training, but not game day.
Yeah, it's like
That makes no
pre-workout,
sense.
apparently.
Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense. And he missed 18 months.
It's a really, really bitter blow for someone just trying to forge their career as well.
It's a disgrace.
Interesting. I just broadly view, Nick, do you feel some way, not cheated, but lied to by the AFL in terms of how this has all been conducted? Because I was under the impression that if you took drugs, the AFL would come down on you hard. But instead, they're saying it's all okay. It's more important to protect the image of the game and apparently your mental well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. You feel lied to, and you're thinking, well, what are they doing to stop this, or what are they going to do? There's no clarity. There's a notion that the AFL sort of going things, changing the goalposts as they like to do, and just making things up as they go. I mean, what was that statement from Andrew Dillon? It's just an absolute PR spin-off. Yeah,
I can tell that was written hastily in the middle of the night by about 100 lawyers, full of legal jargon. It's very hard for all of us to understand. But it pretty much just said, yeah, we think this is best practice. We think this is what needs to happen.
I don't know. It's a doozy, isn't it?
He's come out and said there will be reforms to the AFL drug policy. We've come out here and said, Nick, these are our suggestions on how you can make it a better environment for the AFL players. We'll see what happens next. That is it for episode 41 of the Time On podcast. Nick, it was a pretty big week in football, full of a lot of AFL action. I got to ask you, before we sign off for another week, what are your plans for this weekend?
Hey, well, we've got a very good friend of ours, Xander, 30th on Saturday.
Oh, yes, finally turning 30. These bloody 94 kids, okay? This has gone on and on and on with it. We're in the middle of April nearly.
Stragglers, aren't they? You know what I'm looking forward to, though? It is Gather Round, but there's 9 games. This is the first full week, the first full bird event.
A chicken.
For the year.
I love the 9-game weekend. Thursday to Sunday night, mega walls everywhere.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're all in Adelaide as well.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this earlier today. The concept of Gather Round of 9 games, all these TV crews, all these commentary crews, it's not something we could even comprehend as children, because we'd get like 3 live games around in like 2010.
Yeah, literally, you had Better Homes Gardens always spearheading the weekend. That was a disgrace, mind you. Literally, it wasn't up until, 2010?
Yes.
We had to watch Better Homes and Gardens before the
I think that's a good segment we should do, the rebirth of Fox Footy. What had to happen for Fox Footy to come back into our lives? Because we had Fox Footy in the early 2000s, then they just disappeared for 5 years. They just went away.
Was it between 2007, 8, 9?
I think it felt like longer than that. Because Fox Sports were doing AFL games, so they just had the broadcast.
You're right,
but
sorry.
the Fox Footy channel, it closed its doors in the early 2000s, or at least mid 2000s.
No, correct. Yeah, we'll have to do a little deal.
Yeah, because I can't imagine life without Fox Footy these days.
No.
That is my go-to. That's my number one channel here at home, Nick. So it's so great to have all the games lined up on Gather Round. Just
get the mega already.
Gather Round. We haven't talked about that at all. What's going to happen on Gather Round?
Will Adelaide show up? Will Port Adelaide back it up?
Well, they've got Thursday and Friday night football at the Adelaide Oval. They've got these prime time slots, but there's a few question marks over both those teams, and they're facing some pretty good teams as well.
Yeah, you can say that.
Any other big games you're interested in Gather Round? I've got a couple circled here. Obviously, Port Adelaide, Essendon on Friday night. We talked about Adelaide and Melbourne on Thursday night, but for me, Fremantle and Carlton looks as one of the big games of this round. 2 undefeated sides.
No, it is. It's going to be a big test for Fremantle and Carlton. You're going to see sort of very different opposing styles of footy as well. And I think the Fremantle defence has been so good. Let's see how they handle the Carlton attack.
They've been really good, Fremantle, despite missing a lot of key personnel. Oscar McDonald put out for surgery today. Obviously, they lost Brendan Cox to a major hamstring injury earlier in the year. But they're trying to just piece it together. Luke Ryan's been incredible. Alex Pearce has been really good. Draper, who debuted a couple of weeks ago, he looks really nice as well. But it's going to be hard to contain Mackay and Kerner. That should be one of the big matchups of the weekend. Any other games you have penciled?
Yes, one I've got my eye on is the Battle of the Expansion Clubs. It's Gold Coast GWS.
And where's that game?
It's in...
What's AH there on the run
Rangers?
sheet? It's the Adelaide Hills. So
Hills,
I think they played a game. I don't know if they played Adelaide Hills. They played it at Mount Barker last year. They had Brisbane and North. I'm not sure if this is the same oval or not. Probably should have done this off air. But Gold Coast and GWS, that is a really nice matchup.
Yep.
Two great midfields going head to head as well.
Like GWS always have the wood over Gold
They have. Apart from like the very, very early years when Adelaide would have like 45 touches and 3 goals, GWS have had the wood over the Gold Coast Suns. But that should be a really interesting game, 12:30 on Sunday. Not on the run sheet, Nick, but let's talk a bit of Magpies. 5:10 on Sunday. How do you think you're going to go against your bogey team, the Hawthorn Hawks? What's your record? Like 21-3. I think it's like 3 wins out of your last 24 games. I'm not joking.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We are their bunnies. We cannot beat Hawthorn, whether it's here or away. Oh, look, we can't beat Hawthorn. I'm actually, it's a massive danger game.
But they're not in good form. They're
not,
winless.
But they just find a way. The thing I loved last week was seeing McRae make the moves, getting Johnny Noble down back, getting Nick Dacos down back. Now, if he does not pay James Sicily any attention, like last year when he absolutely chopped us up, then I'll be going, what the fuck? So I reckon we're going to take a lot of lessons learnt from the last time we played them, end of last year. Will Day, fortunately for us, won't be playing.
Not till round 7, I think.
That's right.
think Changus Giath, and I'm not sure why I did it in that accent. Changus Giath, CJ it is called, and Will Day, both be back about round 7. So you're playing not quite the best version of Hawthorn right now. It's not the version that took you down the end of last year.
Exactly. Let's just face it. We're going to play Hawthorn, who are, genuinely right now a bottom 4 side. So, yes, you expect the reigning premiers to beat a bottom 4 side comfortably on a neutral ground. Who cares? But they just have our measure. Look, it's a danger game. I think we're going to be good enough. Thing is, we've got Aaron Chen. Stand-up comedy.
Wait, I am. Is Chenny on this Sunday?
It's at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to have to stream it. I'm going to have to KO it. I know.
I do love Chenny. What do you reckon his favourite possession is? No, it should be very, very good to see Chenny on Sunday. Actually, I might have to watch a bit of Fisk to get myself ready for Chenny. It's such a funny man.
He's a humorous fellow, isn't he?
He is. He's
awkward.
He's incredibly awkward. He's probably the most awkward human I've ever met. And I know DJ Barrel.
Yeah. Barrel.
No, it should be a very fun weekend gather around and Chenny for us on Sunday. If you haven't checked this out on the socials, you know where to find it. It is tomon.podcast on TikTok and Instagram. tomon.podcast@outlook.com for all your emails. We'll get the mailbag back up and running soon. Tomon Podcast, AFL on YouTube. Check out the YouTube show later in the week. But until then, Nick, we'll bid you farewell. Hopefully, Collingwood and Essendon both register wins in gather round. And your final thoughts going into round 4, Nick.
Prepare
It's not a word.
Prepare your mega walls and enjoy gather round.
I'm leaving that in.
What's your favourite possession?
Possession? Position or possession? Well, I don't know. I like the possession up front. Love the strike.
Well, let me just say I've just been possessed by the spirit of football. I love it.